I felt a bit more like confident in that, and I went, I fucking didn't bother with this guy, and he started backing up on us. So I sort of gave him a push, and that's when he squeezed me balls.
Done a little thing a few years ago, didn't we? About 10 years ago? Something?
Yeah, it was like the match thing was a charity match or something.
Yeah, a little thing. What had happened previously, I was suspended for the league game up there, and the boys had come back. So having breakfast on the Monday morning before training, they're all going.
He was shit. That's what Paul Gascoigne said about one of his fiercest rivals. But the truth behind it is much darker. Why did Gazza hate 5 men so deeply? And how much of it was really their fault? Paul Gascoigne was football's flawed genius. Loved by fans, feared by teammates, cursed by his own chaos. The men he claimed to hate were not just rivals, they were mirrors. Each one showed him a part of himself he refused to see. Let's start with the man who made Gazza scared for the first and only time in his career, Vinnie Jones. It was 1988, Newcastle versus Wimbledon. Gascoigne was the rising star, a player so gifted he seemed to belong on a different planet. But Wimbledon were not a normal team. They were the Crazy Gang, a squad that used violence as a tactic, and their manager had given Vinnie Jones one job: stop Gascoigne. Gazza admitted Jones was the only player he was ever worried about playing against. Before the match, he walked past the gym and saw Jones pumping iron. Terrifying, Gazza thought. Oh shit. For 90 minutes, Jones shadowed him. Every step, every touch, every movement. The intimidation started before kickoff. In the tunnel, in the corridors, Jones made sure Gazza knew what was coming. This was psychological warfare before a ball was even kicked. Gazza could feel the threat in the air, the weight of what was about to happen. And then it happened. The grab. Vinnie Jones squeezed Paul Gascoigne's testicles during the match, right there on the pitch, in front of thousands of fans. The image became iconic, a defining moment in English football history. Gazza's face twisted in agony and shock. His expression captured something raw, something vulnerable. It was a violation of every unspoken code in professional football, a message that cut through everything. There are no rules here. No referee can protect you. Your talent means nothing against brute force. But here is where the story gets strange. Gazza did not end up hating Jones. Not really. After the match, the so-called feud disappeared. Jones said it himself. The press made out we hated each other, but we did not. I did a job on the day, and Gazza understood that. Jones was not pretending to be moral. He was not judging Gazza's character. He was just doing his job. Honest violence. In Gazza's world, that was easier to forgive than anything else. The relationship transformed almost immediately. What could have been a lifelong grudge became mutual respect. Jones never apologized for the grab. He never had to, because in the brutal logic of football, he had done nothing wrong. He was an enforcer doing what enforcers do. Gazza recognized that honesty. He valued it. In a sport full of pretense and hidden agendas, Jones was transparent. His violence was upfront, visible. There was no backstabbing, no secret judgments, just a man doing his job. Over the years, their relationship turned into brotherhood. Jones called Gazza like a younger brother. Gazza said he would have loved Jones in his team to protect him. The man who hurt him became the man he respected most. When asked to name the hardest man in football, Gazza picked Vinnie Jones. Not Roy Keane, not Duncan Ferguson, Jones. Because acknowledging Jones as the hardest validated the fear Gazza felt that day. It made his trauma real. Gazza's hatred was not for the men who hurt him, it was for the men who judged him. Next up, the Teutonic Titan, Lothar Matthäus. The 1990 World Cup semi-final, England versus West Germany. This was the high point of Gascoigne's career, the moment he became a household name, the moment the entire country fell in love with him. But it was also the moment he realized he would never be good enough, because standing across from him in midfield was Lothar Matthäus, the Ballon d'Or winner, the embodiment of German efficiency, the perfect player. Everything Gazza was not. Gazza and Matthäus clashed all game. Every tackle, every run, every contested ball. It was chaos versus order, instinct versus discipline, freedom versus control. Gazza was the daft lad from Gateshead, playing on pure talent, raw ability that could not be coached or replicated. Matthäus Mateus was the general, the leader, the system made flesh, the man who turned football into mathematics. For Gazza, Mateus was the immovable object. Every time Gazza tried to break free, Mateus was there, stifling him, controlling him, frustrating him, making him feel small. And then came the yellow card. Gazza fouled Thomas Berthold, a reckless challenge driven by desperation, by frustration, by the realization that he could not break through. The referee booked him. That yellow card meant Gazza would miss the final if England got through. He knew it immediately. The camera caught his reaction, the moment of horror spreading across his face. The tears came later, but in that moment, he knew. Mateus had beaten him, not just in the game, in everything. The yellow card was symbolic. It represented all his flaws, his lack of control, his inability to manage his emotions, his tendency to self-destruct at critical moments. While Mateus remained calm and composed, Gazza imploded. After his career, Gazza never truly let go of that rivalry. When Mateus became a pundit and criticized the German national team, Gazza fired back. He defended the players Mateus attacked, but his criticism was half-hearted. He prefaced it by saying, "There is nothing to reproach Mateus for in all of his past." That tells you everything. Gazza did not hate Mateus, he envied him. Mateus represented everything Gazza could not be. Disciplined, consistent, a World Cup winner. Mateus had a rigid social hierarchy at Bayern Munich. Only the top people could sit at his table. Gazza would have hated that. He dismantled hierarchies with pranks and chaos. But deep down, he wanted to be at that table. He wanted the respect Mateus commanded. He just could not earn it. The rivalry with Mateus was not about hate, it was about insecurity. A reflection of the man Gazza knew he should have been, but never could be. But if Mateus was the rival Gazza envied, Glenn Hoddle was the man he truly despised. 1998, the World Cup in France. Gazza had fought through injuries and struggles to get back into the England squad. He scored against Moldova. He scored against Poland. He was the talisman, the hero. The World Cup was his birthright. Or so he thought. Glenn Hoddle was the England manager, a former creative midfielder, a player who wore the number 10 shirt just like Gazza, a man who should have understood Gazza better than anyone, a man who knew what it meant to carry the creative burden of a team. But Hoddle had a different philosophy. He believed in fitness, in discipline, in preparation, in faith healers. He brought in Eileen Drury to spiritually prepare the squad. Sessions with a woman who claimed to channel healing energy. Gazza thought it was nonsense, complete madness. The tension was building from the start. Two creative players with completely different views on how football should be played, how life should be lived. Then came the kebab incident. Gazza was photographed late at night eating fast food with radio DJ Chris Evans. The media pounced immediately. The narrative was set. Gazza was not taking his preparation seriously. He was the chaotic mess. Hoddle made his decision. At the La Manga training camp, Hoddle called Gazza into his hotel room. He told him he was cut from the squad. Gazza exploded. He trashed a lamp. He damaged furniture. Hoddle later called it his saddest moment in management. But for Gazza, it was not sadness. It was betrayal. Gazza felt singled out. He said 6 other players were out until 6 in the morning, but only he got punished. Hoddle said it was because of his drinking. Gazza said it was because Hoddle wanted to make a name for himself. He called Hoddle a prick in interviews years later. The bitterness never faded. The 1998 World Cup was Gazza's last chance, his last shot at holding on to the structure of professional football. Without it, he had nothing. His alcoholism spiraled. His mental health collapsed. He blamed Hoddle for all of it. Not because Hoddle was wrong about his fitness, but because Hoddle judged his character, and Gazza could not forgive that. This was not a rivalry. It was a wound that never healed. But if Hoddle was the man who rejected him, Walter Smith was the man who tried to save him. Walter Smith managed Gazza at Rangers from 1995 to 1998. He was more than a manager. He was a father figure. Smith protected Gazza. He indulged his need for attention. He invited him to his family home for Christmas when Gazza was alone. And for a while, it worked. Gazza played some of the best football of his club career under Smith, but love was not enough. Gazza's drinking was getting worse. His behavior was spiraling out of control. Smith realized he had to do something. He insisted Gazza attend the Cottonwood Addiction Treatment Center in Arizona, a 28-day rehab program. To an addict in denial, that felt like an attack. It felt like betrayal. Smith was supposed to protect him, not fix him, just accept him as he was. But Smith knew that acceptance without intervention was enabling. It was watching someone everyone destroy themselves slowly. Gazza clashed with Smith over fitness, over discipline, over control. The man who had been his protector was now trying to impose rules, and Gazza rebelled. Smith described it as being caught between helping Gazza and being ruthless. If you are ruthless with him, Smith said, it would fry the boy, but if you are not ruthless, he will destroy himself. In the end, Gazza was sold to Middlesbrough. He likely saw it as another rejection, another father figure giving up on him. But the reality was different. Smith loved Gazza. He was trying to save him, and Gazza could not see it. Years later, Gazza said, "Walter, I love you to bits. The hatred was never real. It was just the sound of a drowning man fighting the lifeguard, trying to pull him ashore." Smith was not the enemy. He was the tragedy. And then there was Duncan Ferguson, the man who simply refused to care. Gazza joined Everton in 2000. His career was in its twilight. The glory days were behind him, but he was still chaotic, still manic, still desperate for connection, still searching for someone who understood him. And at Everton, there was a man who seemed like a kindred spirit, Duncan Ferguson, Big Dunk, a player with a fearsome reputation, a legend of violence on and off the pitch, a man who had served time in prison for an on-field headbutt, a man who scared opponents just by existing. On the surface, they should have been brothers, two wild men in a sanitized sport, two rebels against the corporate machine. But Ferguson wanted nothing to do with him. Ferguson wrote in his autobiography that Gazza wanted to socialize with him, wanted to be his friend, wanted to go out drinking, wanted that brotherhood, but he could not be with him. It would cause problems. Ferguson saw what others did not. He recognized that while he was wild, his aggression was controlled, calculated, purposeful, a tool he could turn on and off. Gazza's chaos was not like that. It was not. It was uncontrolled, unpredictable, driven by mental illness and addiction. Ferguson saw Gazza as a lost soul, a liability, someone who could drag him down. He liked him as a person, but he did not want to be around him. He could not afford to be. For Gazza, that rejection stung. He craved validation from hard men. He wanted Ferguson's respect, but Ferguson saw through the act. He saw the instability, and he kept his distance. Gazza later recalled being on the receiving end of Ferguson's wrath in the dressing room. Ferguson was the alpha, Gazza was the court jester, and he hated it. The tension showed in a petty way. When asked to name the hardest man in football, Gazza snubbed Ferguson. He gave the title to Vinnie Jones instead. It was a subtle retaliation. By denying Ferguson the accolade he was most associated with, Gazza diminished the man who rejected him. It was childish, but it was Gazza. Ferguson did not hate Gazza, he just did not need him. And for someone like Gazza, who needed everyone, that was unbearable. But there was one enemy Gazza truly hated, one villain he never forgave, and it was not a footballer, it was the press. Specifically, the journalists involved in the phone hacking scandal, Piers Morgan and the Mirror Group. While Gazza clashed with footballers on the pitch, the real destruction happened off it. Gazza was a primary victim of illegal phone hacking. His voicemails were intercepted, his private life was exposed, and the worst part? He did not know it was happening. Gazza became paranoid. He thought his own family was selling stories to the papers. He accused them of betraying him, of profiting from his pain. His relationships with loved ones deteriorated. Trust evaporated. He could not understand how private conversations were appearing in print, how intimate details were public knowledge. The paranoia consumed him. In reality, it was his phone being hacked, his voicemails intercepted, his privacy violated by journalists who saw him as content, as a story to sell papers. When he learned the truth, he said the journalists ruined his life. They did not just invade his privacy, they destroyed his ability to trust anyone. The Raoul Moat incident in 2010 showed how far Gazza had fallen. High on cocaine and alcohol, he traveled to a police standoff with a fishing rod and chicken. He thought he could save the fugitive gunman because they were brothers. It was a cry for help from a man whose reality had been shattered, and the media feasted on it. Gazza's hatred for the press is absolute. It is the only hatred that never softened, never turned into respect or love, because the press did not just hurt him, they stole his sanity. So what does all this tell us? Gazza's 5 most hated men were not really enemies, they were boundaries. Vinnie Jones was the physical physical boundary. Lothar Matthäus was the professional boundary. Glenn Hoddle was the moral boundary. Walter Smith was the disciplinary boundary. Duncan Ferguson was the social boundary. Gazza crashed into these boundaries because he had no control. His mental health struggles and addiction made it impossible to stay within the lines. The hatred he expressed was not malice, it was the sound of collision, of a man trying to exist in a world that demanded structure when he had none. Vinnie Jones hurt him but became his friend. Matthäus represented what he could not be, but earned his respect. Hoddle rejected him, and the wound never healed. Smith tried to save him, but Gazza could not accept the help. Ferguson refused to engage, and Gazza felt abandoned. And through it all, the press watched. They hacked his phone. They exploited his breakdowns. They turned his tragedy into headlines. If Gazza had one true enemy, it was them. Gascoigne's 5 most hated men did not destroy him. They were only mirrors, showing him the parts of himself he refused to confront. And that is the real tragedy. Let us know in the comments, do you think Gazza was a victim of his enemies or his own worst one? Like and subscribe for more untold stories from football's most controversial icons.